Okay, let's get this started. So today we're going to do a quick review of the higher points of moving to the Dynamics 365 Unified Interface. So my name is Mitch Milam. You can reach me at one of these methods here. All of my videos plus some other stuff goes out on my YouTube channel. So if you click the subscribe and then click that little bell button icon there, it will actually notify you whenever somebody or me uploads a new video. So today's video will be uploaded later this afternoon whenever I get it processed, etc. It takes about an hour or so sometimes. I still have some Dynamics 365 training if you're interested. And again, through the month of April, if you use the code in this together, when you check out, you get 50% off of either one of my courses. So that's just kind of help everybody ease the transition to working from home and maybe get to learn something at the same time. Okay, so let's get started here. So I have at least 2 other webinars that are relevant to this. I'm not going to get into the same content because it's just duplication of effort, and you can go watch the recordings there, a little bit less than an hour a piece. The first is eliminating technical debt, which is going to be part of this process when moving to the unified interface in my mind. The idea here is you're making a change. You might as well take a good look at what you're doing and how you're doing things to see if you can improve anything, because that's really what part of this process is improving the way that your users work. So now is a perfect time to do it. So I covered that in my kind of a long case study of eliminating technical debt, and then the art and science of model-driven app design. I get even more stuff about how to do some of these things, and then my course, I actually expanded on that quite a bit to talk about the actual nuts and bolts of how this might work. So those are 2 webinars. If you have not seen them, go out to my YouTube channel and check those out as well. So number 1 is know your upgrade date. On my instance, it's already passed. It was, I think, beginning of last month or something like that. If you don't know what yours is, go out to run1.powerappsportals.com, and it will tell you when your date is. You can move it back to any date before the 1st of December, because that is the cutoff date. So after that, there will be no more web interface. It will only be a unified interface. So everybody's going to be upgraded one way or the other. So keep that in mind. So preparing for your environment. So that's kind of a big thing here is what do we do? Well, the first thing is, and it really depends on your setup and if you have on-premise versus online, etc. But the idea mostly is create a copy of your production environment, create a sandbox out of it, and then just see what it looks like. So we have a thing called a solution checker that we'll get into in a minute. You install that. It's just a solution that gives us some extra capabilities. Once it's installed, it will actually do a check to things that are going to cause you a problem sooner or later. And also, you can install it in your production environment if you want to. It doesn't really, I don't think it hurts anything. It may have a performance hit. Sachin asked about on-prem. I don't have any clue of on-prem, to be quite honest. I've seen no guidance on on-prem at all. I haven't even worked on an on-prem environment in 5 years, I guess. So I'm really kind of out of the loop on that. Okay, what the solution checker does is it checks for things that have been deprecated. That's mostly it. Things that will get you in trouble to lesser or more degrees. It checks your JavaScript, the client API stuff. It checks to see if you have dialogues or task flows, both of which are deprecated. The server scheduling, are you using that versus the unified scheduler? All these things it will check and give you a report of what actually is going on. Now, it's called the solution checker, not the environment checker. It checks a solution. So if you don't have a solution that has all of your customizations in it, you need to make one. That's the only way this is going to work. It will not run on the default solution. So it has to be on a solution. You have to put all the things in it. It will not run on a Microsoft solution. So if you're using the Sales Hub, you can't run it on the Sales Hub because Microsoft runs that. And they probably will give you a report somehow or the other. You also can't run it on third-party managed solutions. It won't work on that either, because the vendor or whoever created that solution, even though it's you, it will basically make them do that. Okay, so here's what it looks like when you run it. It kind of runs in the background. You start it up, and we'll cover this in just a second live. You start it up, and then when it gets done, it will email you, hey, you got the results. You can download this into a document that you can take a look at, or you can just do it live online. And basically, you just have these groups of things, you expand them, and then you click on one, and it shows you the details over on the right-hand side of what it is. And again, it will kind of gauge it. Is it medium? Is it where is it? What is it? Is it going to cause a big problem, a little problem, etc.? Okay, so let's jump over into the solution. So you get to this by going out to make.powerapps.com, and then make sure you have your environment selected over here in the upper right. And what I did in this environment, again, this is my production environment for XRM coaches. I just created a solution called my D365 components, and then I put everything in there that I use. It's not much. It's like contact, account, I think I have some samples, some other stuff related to it. And then what you do to run it is you click on it and then select solution checker and then run or view results or download results. These two are available if you have already run it. So over on the right hand side, you can see the status of the solution check. So I ran it this morning, so I can check there. I have not run it on this one. And then this is a managed solution that happens to be my managed solution. So it's checked by the publisher. So if I go to look to say, okay, I want to run it anyway, it's not physically visible. You can't do that, okay? So you can just go through here and see what you can and can't run it on. And if it says either checked by Microsoft or checked by publisher, you can't run it. But if we go to check the results here, you can see I've got several components. So here's something that's no longer being used. Here is code that I wrote for whatever. It's like, oh, do not ship debug helper code in production source. And all that is actually a JavaScript alert to say that I should click the button. Okay. This is some advice about doing development, how to do JavaScript. It's a best practice. And then again, these are just different things. We're showing alerts. Here's where it gets into stuff, okay? XRM.page references or accesses a deprecated API in the client context object model. Replace that with this thing here, which is not technically how it works, but good enough. So this, and we'll get into this a little bit later, this is going to be the major source of you finding things to fix, is these JavaScript references. Okay, again, some of these things here are best practices. So I'm using a double equal sign instead of a triple equal sign for JavaScript. That just means I'm checking the type and the value, not just the value. Okay, and again, it just kind of goes through this. So I have a plugin where I have a query where I'm bringing back all columns. They don't like that. This is a different one. This is a pre-operation. So basically, you kind of have to have a little bit of understanding of what these messages actually mean. Some of them are, okay, you need to fix this. Some of them are just guidance, okay? And again, they have the category here and the severity. So if I want to basically check all these like this is one. This is one I mentioned. So this is a plugin that says all columns, don't use that, which is true in most cases. The reason I'm using it is because I needed all the columns to come back because I needed all the data. This is something I wrote, okay? But other than that, this is a true thing. I've actually seen people use this in production where they don't go to the trouble of retrieving only the columns they need. They bring back everything. And well, if you look at the account or the contact, that could be 200 fields of data that's totally useless and slows the system down. So that's why they're saying that is a high performance severity category. Okay, so basically, like I said, just go through this, run it, download the results, and then just open it up and just kind of go through and see what is actually going to be a problem and what is not. Now, what's fascinating about this, I disagree with this. Okay, they are going to deprecate the XRM.page object model this year, if I'm not mistaken. So it will stop working. So I'm not sure why this is just a medium when it should probably be a high in my professional opinion, because again, this is going away. And the quicker that you get this code out of here and replace it with what's currently the current standard, the better off everybody's going to be. So again, I don't know why this is listed like that, but that's one of the things that I just kind of noticed. Okay, any questions on that? Nope. Okay. So if you do a search for Dynamics 365 transition guide, you'll find a lot of information, a lot of great information. Now, I will tell you, a lot of this information was created literally years ago, because this is not something that has crept up on us. This has been staring us in the face for years, literally 3 years. Okay, so some of the data that you see in especially this guide book here is actually 3 years old. It's from 2017 or 18. Okay, and 19. So mostly 17, 18, I think. So anyway, this has been coming to us. A lot of people are on the way. Some people are already upgraded. If you're on this, you probably are in the middle or you haven't started yet. Okay, so they've got a playbook that they have that kind of gives you, it's a series of just PowerPoints, kind of guides you through this. Let's cover the kind of their high level stuff, and you can look at their PowerPoints and get the other data later. So 4 phases: initiate, explore, transition, and optimize. So initiate is, what is different and new about the unified interface. So this is more of an educational thing. Explore, and this is kind of what we talk about here in a little bit, is do a quick test, create a Parallels test app, create and launch a pilot, and that's just to see how things work, and then review and follow up. So again, just go and do it and see what you're going to get into. Transition is the more redoing. This is kind of goes back to my art and science of model-driven app design. Determine the transition path from what you have now to where you want to be. Understanding the compulsory changes. So what do we have to get rid of, because they are getting rid of them for us. Okay, so that's the top layer. What functionality is being deprecated that we need to remove? Rethink the user experience, put the user first, ensure a methodology alignment. So basically make sure that the way you're working is in kind of tandem with how you decided you wanted to do it. Optimize, monitor, review, and innovate, review the experience, and then the future release cadence. And what that just means is, okay, we have 2 releases a year. They start in April and October, and they will allow us to see what's coming and try to adapt our system to meet those upcoming changes. Who can tell me how Dynamics actually releases the changes that are announced in April and October? Anybody? Put that in the chat. Nobody knows? Oh, there, somebody knows. Optional opt-in, nope. Rob says no idea. Okay, optional opt-in, that's possible. Karen, yes, supposed to be May, but that's still relevant right now. How do they do it? Okay, well, let me go show you this. I had to explain this to a customer yesterday because I didn't really think that they were quite understanding everything. So if I go out and do a search for oops, Dynamics. Okay, here's how this works. We have a release. Then we have a release plan. Okay, they are not the same thing. The release is this document here that's 300 and something pages long, covers the entire product line, and it says this is what we're going to be doing in this wave 1 starting in April of 2020. Should have started in May, and then it's going to go through September 2020. This is the thing people don't actually understand. And even when I worked at Microsoft, I still didn't understand this for probably well over 2 years. Okay, so here's what happens. Here's what we're going to do. This is not when we're going to do it. We're not shipping everything in April. We're shipping between April and September. Okay, a lot of people don't really understand that. So like, I'm like, where is my stuff? They promised me stuff. Now I don't have my stuff. Why do I not have stuff? Well, because that's not how we're doing it. So if you go into these various components over here, so these are apps, so marketing, sales, service, FinOps, human resources, etc. Expand those. So if I go into sales, I will see what's new and planned. This is the plan for the release. Okay. Over here, you have the feature, who it's for, when the public preview happens, when early release happens, early access, and then when it's GA, generally available. Okay. Generally available means it has released to the public as part of the product. Kenny asked if are we obliged to activate and launch on the updates, or does Microsoft do it automatically? Kenny, that is actually a decision you make as the administrator. You can postpone it. There's an opt-out or an opt-in, and you can basically say, give me the changes automatically, or you can specify a date when you want that. It's kind of up to you. You need to be consistent about it, though, to be quite honest. So anyway, so if you scroll through this list here, what you start seeing is we had early access in February. That was the pre-release that we signed up for. That's going to be available this month. Now it's available this month, was released. And if you kind of go, let's go down to service. There's more stuff in service. April, June, April, and then basically what happens is you come in here and you'll find different things, basically just in there depending on whenever they can get to it. Okay, so again, they have a plan. So like this one they released in January as pre-release, and then it's going to ship in April. And so what you will see is you will have, I don't know where they are, but basically depends on which module you're in. It could go out all the way to September. So here's May here. And I don't know if these, I'm pretty sure these have not been updated to reflect the pushing back 1 month of the release. I don't think they have. They may have, I just don't know it. I've never asked anybody, to be quite honest. So anyway, this is where you know when you're after a specific feature, when you're going to get access to it. And just ask about the solution checker since it's not available in the government cloud. I don't do any government work. I cannot answer that question. In all honesty, I would open up a support case and make Microsoft answer it for me. Thomas, yes, it's been postponed 1 month. That's it. Only a month. So again, I don't know if these have actually, I got a feeling this would be a lot of work. I got a feeling this is all manual, so they probably just didn't update these. And again, they're probably rolling stuff out right now. I have seen stuff they're talking about. I've seen people talk about things and don't have it. So the other thing is we have a lot of data centers around the world. And the way they release stuff is 1 data or 2 data centers at a time. They call them geos, okay, for geographic location. So they do not release, say if we're getting contextual email messages, that's a bad one, test and send dynamic email messages, okay? What they will do is they will roll this out to say Australia first, and then Singapore, and then here, and then there, and they'll work their way around the planet until everybody's done. Takes about 3 weeks, 2 weeks, depending on if they run into issues or anything like that. Okay, so they don't roll it out everywhere, and so sometimes what happens, like some of my friends, like over in India, I was like, oh, hey, here's this new feature we got today, and I'm like, I go and I don't have that new feature today because I'm in the US and they're not. And so it hit their geo, but it hit mine. So now I've got to wait some period of time, could be a week, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, before it shows up for me. So that's another thing to kind of get used to. It's a little bit kind of irritating, but and they pick that. So basically, they used to release everything in North America first, and then they changed that. They release pretty much everywhere but North America first. Okay, so they may, like a couple years ago, they did Canada first. And quite honestly, a lot of that is they're going after the smaller geos so they can test the process and make sure nothing pops up they're not expecting, because North America is their largest market for online, I think. And so it's just a matter of, getting it out there. So that's how they actually roll all that stuff out. So it just doesn't, you don't come to work on Monday and find it. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So I thought I'd need to cover that. Oops. Okay. What are your next steps? So I want you to think ahead. And the biggest thing is, it may not be as scary as you think. It's going to 100% depend on how you use the system. It also may be more scary than you think. If you've had an online, or if you had an installation that has existed for years and you've had 10 different CEOs and 30 different IT directors and stuff have made a lot of changes to everything, it could be scary. Okay. But it may not be. Everything is going to be totally dependent on your environment. Okay, so the more changes, the more customizations that you have in place, the longer it's going to take for you to verify everything, because you have to verify everything. Okay, but realistically, we're kind of up against a deadline here. So if you haven't started now, would be a good time to start, because you're going to have to get this done by the end of the year. Okay, so that's just the way it works. So again, just test it. You can put it in the, create a sandbox. You can enable unified interface only. It's just a switch you flip, and then you open the Dynamics 365 custom application, and that will show you your default application. Okay. Now, what causes us problems? The biggest thing that we all are going to have to fix is the JavaScript, because if we're using the XRM.page model, which has been deprecated, it still exists, still works, but it's going to go away sometime. That's probably where you're going to spend a lot of your time if you have a large code base. Okay. Again, it's not rocket science to fix these things. It's just a matter of doing it. It's just manual labor, to be quite honest. Manual labor and a lot of testing. Then the next thing is, you have to figure out, what is your app design going to be? So again, you can use a sales hub if you're using stuff. If you got custom things, you need to put them in there. Do you create your own, app? Okay. How do I work with third-party solutions? I've got click dimensions. Okay. Now what do I do? Do I have is their app the latest one? Yes or no? I mean, I had issues with mine that was like, they had the wrong one installed because they didn't know what version I was on it somehow, but that got all fixed. And now is a good time to kind of rethink stuff, because again, I know probably people didn't really think they, had to do it, but this is a change you're going to have to do whether you want to or not. Okay. So again, we've covered this in previous webinars, but the main thing here is you optimize your navigation. You need to update your icons to the SVG format, which is segmented visual graphic or something like that. It's a different format. So basically, instead of being a bitmap, it's a series of lines and other things that are basically scalable. So you have one that can scale anywhere. Now's the time to review and update your form layout. Okay. So again, we created a system to suit a specific navigation style. That style is now changed 100% different. Okay. So now's the time to change all that. Do we add newer technologies? Again, the amount of changes that we've made in the past couple of years is staggering. Are we taking advantage of those things? Even just like with the April, May release, what are we doing with those? Are we using those properly, or do we have access to them? Are they turned on? Whatever it might be. Can we use PCF controls to do stuff? Give us a different look and feel, whatever it might be. Testing. So lots and lots of testing. And again, as we covered before, get the users involved with this, okay? Because again, they are the ones who use it every day. They need to have a pretty good decision-making process about how things are going to work, okay? So I started a new contract. It's turned into a small one because of everything happened recently. But I got in there, and this is how things look. So this is an account, and this is a sitemap. It's really busy, but I can tell this was made for a reason. And the way it was made to suit a navigation style that no longer exists. And I cannot wait to go fix this. I am so excited about it, but I can't right now because I don't have permission, because we're working on something else and everything else has been delayed until they figure out the situation with the planet. Okay, but as you can see, they've put things in a specific order in the sitemap. That's the stuff on the left. And then for the account example, this is their tab situation. Okay, now again, they did this with a different navigation scheme in mind, and I think that's what most people are actually going to find is, now we have this doesn't look good, this is not efficient, we have things out of order, we can combine things, and just otherwise make it easier for the user to navigate, because now instead of having a long scrolling vertical form, we now have back to tabs again, where we have unique buckets of information. Okay, so with this one, we would redo the sitemap slightly, just rearrange things a little bit, and then like on the account, just try to move things around. So my action plan for this is sitemap, need to make all of the forms consistent. I cover this in the one of the other webinars, and we're basically, like, one of the things I've been doing starting about a year ago is I take the timeline and put it on its own tab, because a timeline, while nice to look at and everything, really just gets in the way. For a lot of people, it's just historical information. Okay, it doesn't help me do my job right now. Sometimes that's not true, but it depends on the situation. So what this place did, in say 9 of the 10 entities they use, they have already moved it. They have 1 or 2 that it's still in place. And to make it consistent, it needs to be 1, move to a tab like all of them, and 2, it needs to be called the same thing on all of them. So in other words, if I call it notes, it's what they call it notes in some places, activities in some places, or one of them has like 3 different labels and it gives it. But regardless, we need to have the same, which is probably timeline. Here's my timeline. It's always the second tab, no matter which entity I go in, it's going to be the same. Therefore, the users can train themselves, say, okay, all that stuff is on tab 2. Okay. Restructure the form's usability. And again, we're going from a vertical to a horizontal layout. We need to redo stuff. In that one I showed you on the account, they had a tab for billing and shipping details, but they had the billing and shipping address on the summary tab. I do not think that needs to happen. And I kind of told them that. So you don't need this twice. They already have it twice. Okay, let's put it where it's needed. Okay. They've got JavaScript that's still in the pre-version 9 model, so it uses xrm.page. It's 2 or 3 days worth of work to fix it, and probably a day or 2 of testing. Again, it's not rocket science, it just has to be done. Or just a few things have to be getting just kind of cleaned up. And with anything, anytime you make a code change, you just have to be able to clarify what's going on. And then finally, they have some third-party solutions that they use at some point that are no longer active. Those all need to be taken out. For one thing, if you have code that is no longer, in this case, it's actually no longer supported by the vendor because they've moved on from that. They actually got acquired by a larger company, and that specific thing they're no longer supporting. Well, since they're not supporting it, they can't modify it, and it needs to be modified to bring it up to the current object model. Well, now we have a problem, because now we have code that is no longer supported that's in the system, and there's a possibility that one of the checks that Dynamics does will basically throw an error on that code when you have nothing to do with that. Okay, and in this particular instance, the customer is actually not using the what this stuff does. They have a dynamic form capability, with kind of like business rules on steroids, to be quite honest. They're not even using it any longer, but so we can actually physically remove that without causing problems. But they are using some of the other components that are built into the supporting libraries, which are very easy to change. I mean, I've already, some of the last development I did, I actually put in the code to actually replace at least one thing. We just have to go and replace that code and test it. So again, it's just work that has to be done. There's really no easy way around it. But again, it's not rocket science. This is probably a couple weeks worth of work, all in. Most of it again is pretty well laid out. It's just one or two entities, or it's just like what was the process, the decision process for how this happened, and that's all it is. And so you just got to go and figure, okay, this is where we were, this is where we are today, how do we get there? Okay, so who has questions? There's got to be some questions here. Let's see. Haris asked, any changes to dashboards, plugins, and custom workflow activities? In all honesty, most of your plugins and custom workflow activities should work exactly the same. That model, as long as you follow just standard plugin best practices, that model hasn't changed for quite some period of time. So most of the things, like even on with the test I did, it was like, oh, you need to do this way. And I was like, okay, well, it didn't tell me anything bad. It was just like, okay, don't use all columns when I did a query. But once that's there, dashboards really haven't changed at all. That's all still exactly the same. The only addition to it is you now have the ability to put in a Power BI dashboard or a Power BI dashboard tile. So one of those two things. Brian asked, we are on-prem and have seeing things work on the web, but we're seeing lookup issues in UCI. Brian, I have zero experience with on-premise in literally years. I really can't answer that. I hate to say it, dude, but you need to make a transition path to online, because it's just not going to go away. So they haven't come out and said that, but I don't know. It's not going to be a pretty thing. Tim asks, is recommend to have multiple unified interface apps for departments, functionality, sales, operations, etc. Tim, I kind of cover that in one of the other webinars. So go watch the model-driven app design. I talk about having multiple apps versus just having one app. So go look at that, and that will kind of get dive deeper into that. The answer is, as always, it depends. Okay. Imran asks, any tools you recommend for automated UI testing? I haven't gotten into it. There is, what is that? What is that framework everybody uses? Is it built on Selenium? Okay, somebody knows what I'm talking about. There is a thing, it's out on GitHub, that is a Easy Repro. Thanks, Rika. Easy Repro, go look that up, is a tool that everybody uses. Now, it is coding. I will tell you that. You have to be a developer to use it. It's not codeless. So you're going to have to know, you have to be a developer to do it. Okay. Anish, technical question. How do we pass the record GUID when we use Navigate 2? Dude, that's too deep for this thing. We'll have to take that offline. And actually just go use that, go just do a query on that. Somebody, Andrew Pachinko came out with an article about that, I think not too long ago. Go look him up. Yes, just search on that, and they'll bring it up. I'm going to ask, Microsoft really going to kill on-prem? Well, okay. My crystal ball happens to be in the shop because I was drinking bourbon one night and it dropped and it cracked. And so now it's being repaired by the magical repair people. I want you to look at the evidence. When's the last time they actually updated fully on-prem? And then you find out the answer to that question, and I think that will give you a path forward. So Thomas says, in the sandbox, we need to add in a project solution to model-driven app component, which is the redesign entities. Yeah. So like what I did and that one I showed you, that my D365 components, that's what I did, because I'm just me. So I just do everything in the default solution. I know, bad practice. But yeah, what I did is I just went and added all the things, or created a solution with all your stuff in it, and then run the solution checker on that. Like I said, it will not run on the default solution. So you're going to have to create a solution that has all the components. Now, what's fascinating about it is when I did that through the make interface, and I created a solution, um, it did not ask me to add a required component. So when I ran it, it didn't give me any valued report. And then I realized later on that none of my JavaScript on those forms was included. So I went back to the classic interface, opened the solution up, clicked on add required components, and added everything that was associated with it. And then it checked the JavaScript. So that was fine. Any changes for USD? USD is going away. That's being replaced by Universal Service Desk. That's being replaced by the new Omni Channel Hub. So that's a totally different thing, which I quite honestly don't want to get into. It's deep, okay, but that's what that is. Thomas, I lost your thread here. What are you asking? Oh yeah, Thomas. So yeah, ask about deploying changes to the UAT. So yeah, so generally what you do is you can create the solution and then make your changes and then deploy that solution to UAT. Now would not be a bad time to create a new app for your company. And if you're only using the default solution, now would be a good time to create your own app and in your own solution that has everything. Such as is USD deprecated. I don't think it's officially deprecated. It's just being replaced. So don't quote me on that, but that's just my kind of understanding. Okay, Tim is asking about the in the update section about the 2020 release 1 wave is off. You have to go turn it on physically, and it's just clicking that and just saying turn it on, and that will go and do it by itself. Tim. Kieran asks, is it advisable to get rid of integrations, custom code that's working perfectly fine within UCI and replace with flows to leverage out of the box? That is a religious discussion. And the answer is, it depends. Any time that I can remove custom code and work with out of the box, I choose to do so. What you just said is not the same. You said flows, you replace with flows, okay? Flow is a feature. A custom flow, which you would be creating, is not a feature. That is a maintenance point. So you're replacing one maintenance point with another maintenance point. If the current maintenance point is valid and constructed well and working, I would not change it. Because what I have personally found is, and boy, I'm gonna get yelled at if people hear this, but this whole low code thing is really great until you have to get stuff done. And I can tell you from personal experience that I have wasted half a day and then had to spend an hour and wrote a plugin and did the same thing. That's just me. Okay. I love the little low code thing and stuff like that. And, I don't want to get into arguments to everybody, but, again, if it's working, I wouldn't rewrite it. I mean, I can do stuff right now with a custom workflow using the old workflow engine that it would literally take me half a day to do inside of Flow because I can't figure it out because I'm not smart enough. Okay, that's just being said. You probably different. Eric brings, there is a 9.0 on Prim update. Yeah, it's 9.0-ish. I mean, it's not the same. It's never going to be the same. But basically what's happening, Eric, is more and more features are coming out. It only works in online, and they don't make any apology. They don't plan to make it work on Prim. Again, I'm not saying they're trying to make on-prem die, but that's just really it, I think. But again, more and more features will only work if you're online. So again, I think the writing's been on the wall for quite some period of time. When I say, I mean literally almost 10 years that they've been talking about this. Tim asked, deadline for replacing classic workflows with flows. They're basically, we don't have a deadline. I mean, this is, did anybody see the thing about the state of New Jersey is asking for COBOL programmers to help them because they need to upgrade one of their systems and they don't have any? COBOL is a business language that there are billions of lines of code probably still in existence. And workflows are the same. There are millions of workflows out there. I wrote most of them. And again, they work, they're just cranking along. They've been working for years. They'll continue to work until they shut it off. That will probably, in all honesty, unless they can come up with a conversion tool to move from one to the other, that will be the last thing that they do, because it's just going to be too hard. You know, they're getting closer and closer as the years go by and the revisions, but until they can actually migrate those into Flow without the user having to rewrite it, which is what happens now, it's just not going to happen. Okay, so they keep threatening, you know, you need to, you know, use Flow instead. I'm like, I'm still not as productive inside the Flow as I am in the workflow. Again, that's just my experience. Again, and it all varies. And then Eric talks about, yeah, differences in workflows and stuff. I mean, like I said, I love Flow for certain things. It's really a cool tool, but again, with the whole, you know, I can still do it quicker and faster and easier using the workflow than I can with Flow, because everything's right in front of me. I know what I can do, and I don't have to hunt for stuff. That's my big thing. And yes, you cannot trigger a flow the same way that the workflow engine works. Again, they're working on that. You know, they will reach feature parity at one point in time. I don't know when that point's going to be, but they will do that at one point. And once we have that, then we'll have a replacement. But like I said, if they can't figure out a way to migrate our existing workflows, they're going to have a hard row to hoe with the old farming thing. Sorry. They're going to have a hard time getting people to migrate. And you know, speaking of this, you know, the migration to from legacy web to UCI, this is not as bad as back from CRM 4.0 to CRM 2011, where they changed 100% the object models for both the JavaScript and the .NET code. Every single piece of .NET and JavaScript had to be rewritten by hand. Okay, I created a tool to convert the JavaScript, and you would have thought I'd be a millionaire by now, but basically people still did it by hand because that's just the way it worked. Okay, long story, I won't get into it, but anyway, but yeah, this is not that bad. Felix asks, what circumstances do we need to bring a Canvas app? That's really kind of dependent on functionality. If you're talking about embedding Canvas apps, really and truly where that shows up is if you've got a specific function that the Canvas app does, you would add that to the form. I've done that with more or less display assets is what I call it. Like I had a specific thing I wanted displayed, like a non-standard charting mechanism or a gauge that was only available in Canvas apps, and it was kind of wired in to the data of the record. That worked out pretty well, but it's really kind of circumstantial, and it's totally going to be dependent on what you're doing. I think it's actually more of a rare occurrence than not, because you've got two different development environments you got to work on. Kieran asks, do have a webinar on design environments? No, I don't have anything like that. Basically dev, UAT, production. You use the word licenses. I am never, ever, ever going to get into a license discussion with anybody. One, I'm not qualified, and two, I'm not going to. Okay. It changes too much. I get tired of being an idiot all the time because it changes too much. And the only people that know licensing is the people who create it, and they don't tell anybody else. They tell everybody else. It's like the Bible. You interpret it. Okay. So they also have changed everything recently to where you're not charged by environment, you're charged by space. That's another thing that just changed. Okay, so I think where your question is going is how do we do this and how do we pay for it? Well, now it's not an issue anymore. It's a storage thing. So again, if you had asked me a question 2 months ago, it would have been different than the answer today. He says, can we use our Canvas app under a ribbon button? I have never tried to launch a Canvas app from a ribbon button, but the thing about a Canvas app, you do have a URL that goes to that app, and you can actually launch that app via URL. This is not the embedding of a Canvas app as people have shown. This is actually putting it in as a web resource that points to a URL that is the Canvas app. You might could do it like that. Tim's asked another question. Tim, I'm going to, I don't have my video turned on. I'm going to start charging you. Remember, you get one question, you've asked 10. I'm just kidding. For UCI apps that will be used in the mobile devices, can you make any special form designs? Yes, you can. So as always, mobile can be different than web. So you can have a different control shown on mobile, which is actually, that's not true. You can have there are three different platforms, device platforms that we work with: web, tablet, and phone. Each one of those can have a different control on it, which is a different design. But do I? No, I don't. It really, because most of the time it's the same data. The only time you really get into putting specific mobile only controls is some of the numbers. They have things that are better operated with the finger versus typing a number in. That's the only time that ever comes up in my professional opinion. Other than that, just typing a number in is just as good as using your finger to scroll a gauge or something like that. It's really kind of dependent. I mean, it looks good in demos and stuff like that, but to be quite honest, it really depends on the usage. What else we got? Race asks, regarding JavaScript changes post UI upgrade, should we need to upgrade the JS to V? I'm assuming that's 9 version. That's correct. Yes, you need to be on the version 9 object model. Thomas asks, I guess there's a need to update the icons. Yes, the UCI interface, it doesn't use bitmaps for icons. It uses the SVG format. So there are conversion tools out there. I actually mentioned one in my art and science course. It's from SyncFusion that will actually give you a bit of SVG file that you can import. So why did run workflow disappear from the command list in different entity forms when we applied the wave 1? It did not disappear. It got moved. Well, let me go show you. That's a good question. Where am I? So what he's talking about, he or she, let me open an account. Do I even have a... Okay, on the command bar, we should have, well, we should have a command bar to start with. There we go. We should have a thing that says run workflow. We do not have a thing that says run workflow. Why not? Well, that's because they stuck it somewhere different. And I don't have any. Let me go, where do I have opportunity? Well, I don't try not to bring them up. Okay. It's under the flow. There's a flow button. Okay. Click on flow, wait a second or two, it'll pop up. So that's where it is. So yeah, so it's under flow. Yeah, I don't have any flows turned on in this thing, and I don't want to open my contacts list up and show people stuff. So yeah, yeah. So click on flow, and it's right there. Yeah, it's it caught me. I'm like, I spent 30 minutes looking for it, and finally I just started digging around and asked the right question to the Google, and it's like, oh, put it there. I'm like, really? Okay, well, there we go. Yeah, Flow's been in Power Automate. Yes, marketing at work. Okay. Anything else? No. Dude, the form editor has not been on the UCI ever, so that's never going to happen. So never going to happen. Yeah, they took that off a long time ago. All righty then. Well, thank you so much for showing up today, and we will talk to you, I'm assuming, next time. I will think of something good to bring up for the next webinar, but have yourself a lovely weekend. If you celebrate the Easter holiday, then have a safe and happy Easter with your family remotely. Thanks.